This is the story of a town that vanished into thin air. It's one of the strangest mysteries in American history, and even after all these years, no one has been able to solve it. It all started in 1917. For decades, there had been rumors about gold in the area near the town of Tanada in south-central Alaska. So in 1917, prospectors arrived with the goal of striking it rich. They were so convinced that they would find gold here that they actually built an entire town. They named it Reed's Landing, after one of the prospectors, James Reed. But the gold rush didn't go as planned. The prospectors spent years searching for gold, but they couldn't find any. Eventually, everyone packed up and left, except for one man named Joe Redfield. He decided he wasn't going to leave empty-handed. So he set up a small cabin and began trapping animals for their fur. But after a couple years, this too became unprofitable, and he moved away. By 1924, the settlement was completely abandoned. But then 2 years later, prospectors came back. Gold hadn't been found yet, but rumors persisted, so they thought they'd try once again. This time they brought more people with them, and soon the settlement was bustling with activity again. There was even a jail. But once again, the search for gold turned up nothing. Eventually, the prospectors gave up, and they all left town, with the exception of one man who stayed behind in a cabin by himself. That man's name was Carl Ketzner, and he had come to the settlement in 1926. But when a government official went by his cabin in 1932 to collect taxes, they found something strange. The cabin was completely deserted. His food supplies were still there, and his dog was there too, but there was no sign of Carl anywhere. Strangely enough, this wasn't the last time that this happened either. In 1932, a pilot named Carl Erickson landed his plane nearby and noticed the settlement, or what was left of it. Once again, he found one of the buildings occupied. A trapper was living inside of it, and he said that he had been living there for over a year. He told Erickson about how he had heard stories of Reed's Landing from some prospectors. Then he packed up his things and moved there, built a new cabin, and settled down. But just as before, the man disappeared without a trace. The cabin was abandoned once again, although this time it seemed like whoever lived there had only been gone for a very short time. I guess their belongings were still there. Some of the food was still fresh. Their bedroll was laid out as if they had just gone out for the day. Their tools were sitting by the door and their rifle was leaning in the corner. It really seemed like they had just disappeared into thin air. This happened several more times over the next few decades. In 1949, a young couple named George and Elizabeth Crocker showed up at the settlement, and they built themselves a log cabin. Soon after they arrived, a forest ranger checked in on them, but there was no sign of them. The cabin was locked up tight, and there was no response when he knocked. Just 2 weeks later, the cabin was found destroyed and partially buried in a landslide. But the Crockers were never found. Then in 1958, 2 men arrived at the settlement. One of them was a veteran prospector named Tex Rickard. He was well known in Alaska for finding rare minerals and gems. He and his companion built a cabin and stayed there for almost a year, living off of the land and searching for minerals. But one day, while walking past some buildings of the old town site, they noticed something shiny in the grass. At first they thought it was a can, but as they got closer, they realized it was a human skull. They reported their discovery to the police, but when they went back to the scene, they couldn't find the skull anywhere. Over the next few days, they searched the area and eventually found more bones. There were 5 skulls total, and they appeared to be from European ancestry. None of the bones could be connected to any missing persons case, and so the mystery of their identity remains unsolved to this day. A newspaper from the time wrote, "A full-scale investigation was conducted by the Anchorage FBI office with officers combing the surrounding hillsides for additional evidence. But aside from discovering a few more bones and articles of clothing, nothing else was uncovered. What happened to the missing persons? Did Tex and his companion kill them? Had they been murdered by a member of Reed's Landing during the gold rush days? Or was there another explanation entirely? These questions remained unanswered, and in the following years, there were even more strange occurrences. During the summers of 1968 and 1969, a group of archaeologists excavated the site of Reed's Landing. They were doing this under the permission of the state of Alaska. But one day a man named Ivan Anderson showed up claiming that he owned the land. When the archaeologists asked him how this could be, he responded, "I just do. I bought it from the government." He demanded that they stop their excavation and leave. The leader of the archaeological team complained to the governor about this, and the governor sent a representative to investigate. They found that Anderson's claim was false. He had unpurchased the land, and he had no legal right to tell the archaeologists what to do. But why was he trying to keep them from excavating the site? To this day, no one knows for sure. Anderson passed away in 1985, but his will stipulated that none of his heirs could ever sell the land. So it seems like he wanted to keep it in his family forever, but why? All these years later, we still don't know. In 1972, the state finally decided to take action against the ghost town. They tried to demolish it, but this proved to be difficult because the buildings were made out of concrete. Even after they blew up the foundations and removed the floors, the buildings were still standing. And so the state bulldozed them until not a single building remained. All that stood in its place was a crumbling concrete schoolhouse and the ruins of a few cabins. Even though it had been completely leveled, reports continued to come in of people seeing buildings and even entire streets. Many said that it looked exactly like the town had in its heyday, but when they went to check the next day, everything was gone, and that's how it remained. People kept reporting seeing the ghost town, but no one was ever able to prove it existed. By 1981, the town had been completely forgotten. No one remembered where it was or even what it looked like. And that's how it stayed for another 4 decades. No one knew what had happened to the town of Reed's Landing, or did they? In 2022, a man named Steve McCullough rediscovered the site. He lives nearby now and was hiking in the area with his drone. When he came across the old town site, you might have seen the pictures. There are no buildings left, just a few foundation outlines. But he said that it felt like time travel. Couldn't believe that such a large town could have existed here and then completely vanished. If he had discovered the town a few decades earlier, perhaps it could have changed everything. Maybe the mystery of the lost town would have finally been solved. But even though the town of Reed's Landing is gone, the mystery of what happened to it lives on. Some say the town is cursed. That's why all the prospectors lost their minds and disappeared one by one. Others say the land itself is haunted, which is why anyone who tries to settle there meets a bad end. But whatever the truth may be, one thing is certain: the story of Reed's Landing isn't over yet. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, check out more content.